Alright, hell yeah. This is just a quick little video. I kind of want to speak kind of quietly, you know what I mean? Just so I have my own thoughts, not projecting. Uh, Not being listened in on or anything like that. But anyway, so, it's interesting. I have been atheist for probably 4 years, you know what I mean? And, or just intrigued with atheists' perspective, because it has actually helped me with my mental illness tremendously. You know what I mean? It's like the success story, and I could share ways of how it might help other people, but that's not what I'm getting at. But one of the aspects, and not from all atheists, but from at least one, was just like, hey, you should educate yourself. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if you have a strong stance against theology, you know what I mean, maybe study up on theology so you can make more sound arguments, even just for yourself. But even if at some point help other people to see, just from an outside perspective, what it looks like you're diving into. So yeah, I started that route. I read the New Testament. I'm a slow reader, you know what I mean, a couple pages a night, maybe 3 or 4, sometimes more. But so New Testament into the Old Testament, and you know what I mean. We're still in the first 5 books. We're in book number 4. Let's see, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. We're in Numbers. You know what I mean. And that aside, I guess to get to the point. I joined a Bible group too, and that's the most fascinating. I ain't going to church because that's the part that is just that's the part that I just can't. That's the part that's a little ridiculous because it's putting your so the passages that really hit me the hardest were just hell yeah, the New Testament for sure. It is just like, yeah, the new covenants between you and God. You know what I mean? You and Jesus. You know what I mean? And again, let's get to the point. I think the whole thing is metaphor. You know what I mean? Great. That's just my position. But at least I'm intrigued with it. And I'm more intrigued with it actually now than just reading it to have, crass comments to say. Or trying to to actually debate and take apart other people's arguments. You know what I mean? Because I got a head on my shoulders and I just see the angles. You know what I mean? I see why people enjoy Christianity, and I kind of have my insights of kind of why it became so popular. Just in a couple words, it's because it's complete. It's completion. You have the old. You just have kind of stories of communication with God, and then at some point you have a completion to the story. You know what I mean? So actually, that's one aspect of Christianity. That's why it will probably stand the test of time, be elevated to higher than fable, even though from my point of view it's fable, but not in a bad way. Definitely not in a bad way. I mean, some like fiction in a lot of ways. I think even from a philosophical perspective, we don't run our lives from nonfiction. We run our lives basically from fiction. And if our fiction actually coincides with nonfiction, then we're okay with it. And I think I'm only going to say that once because I don't have much to dive into. But I'm just glad I said that because I actually want to dive into that concept. And what I just said was actually profound. So I'm just going to make sure I can actually go back to that. Said again. I think fiction runs our lives. And when our fiction coincides with the nonfiction that potentially is reality, that's when we hit the secret sauce. You know what I mean? And to a huge degree, just because of numbers and intrigue, Christianity, you know what I mean? That's the whole game of being like, hey, it does coincide. So I guess, I'm only like 4 months in. I would say about 4 months into actually giving given two shakes of a stick. But no, so I first started my intrigue just because the masses that actually care more than two sticks about the book. You know what I mean? And again, yeah, just educating it to actually be better at debate. And then let's talk about that. There's a huge aspect of Christianity that is debate oriented. That is not just me and God, me and Jesus. It's the reach. It's the reach across. You know what I mean? Being no matter what denomination, it's about being a little bit charismatic. You know what I mean? Caring for your neighbor. You know what I mean? Or and it can, I think, from my outsider perspective, yeah, it gets a little skewy. You know what I mean? It gets a little fiction-y, where it's just like, oh, okay, at the end of the day, I get it. It's fiction, but it has elements that still reside in potential nonfiction. All right, so I think I started this video because even in the Bible group, like just right off the bat, like first week, they're just like, well, I was totally accepted as an atheist because, you know what I mean? Kind of I don't know if it's an adage, but for sure, evangelical Christians are more probably intrigued about converting atheists because they're convertible. You know what I mean? You ain't converting a denominational Christianity to a different denomination. That's unheard of. Doesn't happen. You know what I mean? People make that gap, make those leaps on their own for whatever reasons. But yeah. So I know that, and I fit right in. Peas in a pod. And, you know what I mean? Ain't no thing but chicken wing. You know, the first couple weeks, they're just like, oh yeah, what do you have to say about that? And I was like, well, I better just not say anything and just enjoy being part of this group. You know what I mean? So that's kind of, yeah. So there's a trust element, but then I always have to keep it real. You know, at least even in a joking way. You know, to be like, you know, it's interesting because it's undeniable. There's an aspect of culture that is just that. My uncle says it's culture. It's cult-like. You know, the cult is part of our culture. You know what I mean? And I definitely have resonated with that. And I'll speak just from my own thoughts, is that your peers, your family, the people around you, potentially have more say in how you run your life compared to the say that you have. I mean, that's just you know, especially if you're looking at 1950s, 1960s. You know, it probably wasn't until like the late 60s things started to change a little bit. But heck yeah. I mean, even in 2023, yeah, everyone's trying to reach across. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, sometimes it's hard to like check yourself. Am I living my life the way I would live my life? You know what I mean? Or am I just, man, it's so interesting. But yeah, I think a huge aspect of reality is what it is. You know what I mean? I guess I run my life based on kind of what other people think. But for those, I don't know. That's to be explored a little bit further. So anyway, but even that first couple weeks, atheists joining a Bible group, everyone being okay with it. They were just like, well, you know what I mean? I mean, just throwing stuff that's just like real easy for me to like, I can't care about this at all because it just seems too, you know, outlandish. But yeah, there's a desire for being like, oh yeah, look at this scientist, this scientist that's actually a Christian. You know what I mean? That's like a buzz thing. You know, that gets attention. All right, so let's just get to why I actually turned on the camera. So I'm really fascinated, just currently, just with F equals ma. It's Newton's law, and actually just to downplay this, like it just says a force is equal to mass times acceleration. So if you see something accelerating, Well, if you saw something, it must have had a mass, because obviously you saw it and it's matter, because you saw it. And if it's accelerating, well, great, some force, it took some force to do that. Whether it's gravity, because you dropped an apple out of a tree, or whether it's a car going from a stop sign to like 25 miles an hour. You saw it accelerate, changed velocity, went from 0 to some other velocity. And in that time, it accelerated. Cars got mass. It takes a certain force to actually do that. Overcome the friction of the tires, blah, blah, blah. But the interesting thing, yeah, let's dumb it down a little bit. What's a force? Who cares? Even that's totally arbitrary. So honestly, it's kind of like even F equals ma is almost like a identity where it's actually probably I don't know. I just kind of, it was interesting because I like when like smart scientists are just like, yeah, but what's a force? Who cares? You know what I mean? A force is just a total made up concept. A force is basically just mass accelerating. If you have any mass accelerating, that's a force. Whether you feel that mass accelerating, cool, but whether you feel the weight of your body because you have this mass times the acceleration of gravity, even though you're not moving closer towards the center of the earth, you still have that force. I don't know what I'm getting at there, but anyway, F equals ma actually governs every. I was talking to my brother. It's like, yes, from Newtonian mechanics, which can get down to like molecules, atoms. Newtonian mechanics says, yeah, things with mass obey F equals ma. Like basically everything does. So if you see anything moving and then it changed direction or it sped up, slowed down, some sort of force had to have each of those molecules, whether it's air moving, you know what I mean, by doing my hand this way, all those molecules, well, they accelerated. F equals ma. It took a certain force to actually move this air that way. All right, so like most things, especially Christianity, it speaks in metaphor. I just thought this was a little bit more powerful than metaphor because it kind of sums up my perspective of Christianity. It is a social construct. It's not a physical property like F equals ma. But it is like a movement of some sort, and you know what I mean, for better or for worse, you know what I mean. I understand that it exists, but the idea of it existing is outside even the beliefs and the doctrine. Just the fact that it's the people that actually, so it has an intrinsic quality to it that's what I'm most fascinated about. And that intrinsic quality is quantifiable, you know what I mean? It's irregardless of the fable. See, that's why it's just like a story, whether it's a folk tale. Some of your most powerful or some of your most life-changing stories could be a folk tale. You know what I mean? It's fiction because it coincides maybe so well with nonfiction. And I don't use that word in an absolute because it'd be absolutely impossible to figure out what existence is. You know what I mean? That's when you get into, I don't know what kind of conversations you get into. But I was just inspired. I guess it's just an inspiration. Well, it's not even a metaphor anymore. But F equals ma is that it takes a certain force to move anything. And every molecule that moves has to move based on F equals ma. It is interesting. But to actually move a person, that's where the analogy comes in. Well, it just takes a word. You know what I mean? And so the Christian doctrines, the Christian idea is whether that word is within you or that word is spoken through you. But, that's why the idea, it fits into that idea of culture to a cult. to a movement, to a I don't know what adjectives to use, but I just find it fascinating that yes, F equals ma. You can quantify the force if you see mass moving, but what's the intrinsic, like, do we, like, what's the intrinsic, and I think there's correlations here, even just on a metaphorical level, because honestly, still people don't know why gravity kind of, I guess our best explanation, warps space-time, kind of makes that funnely cone, just like you're rolling a coin at the mall in the 80s down that yellow circle, kind of that yellow black hole, and then it drops in. And I think I was trying to make a correlation between it is a perfect correlation, because just that something outside the box, that's where it got me intrigued, because F equals ma, well, is in a closed system. It's inside the box. It's Newtonian. And then you get to a place where you get outside of that Newtonian. We already know that. Things get a little different, you know what I mean? And so I think that's one aspect of the movement. And I guess it even works the same. I don't see any difference between atheism and Christianity. That the idea of debate, thinking, ideas is like that. That's the thing that's an equal playing field. Probably hard for people to see, but that's kind of what I see. So it all seems like the same side of the same coins. I get that the outcomes can be way different, but still, you get to a point where there's kind of nothing to holding on to, but there is kind of like a driving force, beyond it. Just the fact that just a little bit of breath of air and a word can be a movement for a group of people, whether it's atheists or Christians. So that's the similarities and differences, and hopefully maybe the similarities that I see between those two. And that was my only attempt so far as seeing a correlation between science and the full scope of Christianity. Now, I haven't read the entire Bible, but I kind of have a gist of it. And, I ain't one to be like, oh yeah, this is actually a science equation that's proven in this little passage. I don't think. I mean, unless we're talking fractal broccoli, you know what I mean, that the part is part of the whole. At some point, a lot of the stuff's like, who cares? But if there's some big take home points, those are the ones that I keep tabs on as I go through. You know what I mean? And especially, you know what I mean. Not just doing it to come up with some jokes and be extra snarky and be good at talking points and be good at debate, which we will be when we're kind of done with this. But I'm allowing it to at least shape for the time being, and in the smallest way possible, because yeah, I mean, we're doing it now. We ain't pretending anything. Even when I did shamanism, there was an idea of like, hey, I'm just gonna pretend, and then you're just like, I don't think I'm doing it right. You know what I mean? And so we're not using any of that fluff on our little expedition that we're doing. But all right, that's my little, I guess, 20-minute. You know what I mean? Kind of where we're at. 4 months in. A couple months ago, I was just playing Tetris and just making jokes. But I don't know. So yeah, there you go. Has changed me a little bit. So that's good. But always good to know where you're at, where you're going. All right. Thanks for joining me. And that's a video.